I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm Evander Holyfield. And with all due respect to Mitt Romney, stay away from D's.
On the show tonight, Bill de Blasio says he won't run. Have the Koch brothers chosen anyone? And secrets are no fun. But first, Benghazi. We learned today that the Republican House investigation into that controversy might not be released now until well into next year, maybe right before Election Day. Bloomberg's eponymous man on the House beat, Billy House, first reported that the committee is citing, quote, factors beyond its control and blaming the executive branch for the delay in the investigation. That, on first blush, sounds bad for Hillary for America. But, John, whatever the reason for the delay, is it clearly better politics for Republicans that this play out over time than a speedier process would be?
Well, no, I don't think it's necessarily better politics for Republicans. And it's clear, first of all, that the Clinton people would like this to happen sooner rather than later. We have a letter released that Trey Gowdy was sent today by David Kendall, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, basically saying she's ready to testify. She wants to testify in public. She wants it to happen soon. And that there are no unanswered questions. And to the extent there's anything they want to talk to her about, they should get this over with. So it's obvious that they think it would be better for her to get it out of the way. On the other hand, I think Republicans, if they drag this out, there's a risk that the party will start to think that this is a silver bullet on Hillary Clinton. And they thought Benghazi was a silver bullet at the end of 2012, too, and it wasn't. I think Republicans could end up being led into a briar patch on this and put way more weight on it than it deserves.
And the closer it gets to Election Day, the more the Clinton folks can say this is pure politics. Chairman Gowdy, who runs this investigation now, is being underestimated by a lot of Democrats. And the Clintons, I think, are overestimating the extent to which Hillary Clinton can automatically do what she's done in the past when she's gone up to Capitol Hill, which is dominate Republican questioners. And I think the earlier it is, the harder, if it's done well by the Republicans and they ask questions that are solid, particularly on this email issue, which I think at this point will have more traction than Benghazi itself, I think it could hurt Hillary Clinton now when her campaign is not off the ground.
Well, I think there's some chance of that, and I agree with you about the fact that they think that she will that she will go out there and kind of blow the room away, and she'll be much stronger than Gowdy or any of the Republicans on the committee. But you can also understand why they would like to get it over with sooner, right? Because the last thing you want in any campaign is the unpredictable, the thing that you can't, the proverbial surprise, whether it's a September, October, July, August surprise. You don't want that surprise lingering out there. So they want to try to get this out of the way. But I do think that there's a again, I can't overstate the situation. I think Republicans who think that putting this off into the election year, I think there's a real risk on their side, too.
They should be pressing harder to do the right thing and do it fast.
All right, that was a lot of James Carville there. I like that. Okay, some people, and I do mean some people, think that Bill de Blasio should run for president. As Wayne of Wayne's World would say, squeeze me? Baking powder? Today at the Gotham City press conference, Observer reporter Jillian Jorgensen asked the money questions.
Are you running for president?
No. 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 I've really said no a lot. I'm going to say no again. I am running for re-election as mayor of New York City in 2017. What I'm doing is I'm trying to talk about an issue that I think is a profound national crisis and needs attention and is going absolutely unaddressed right now in Washington. And I'll do anything I can to put the issue of income inequality front and center.
All right, so he's not running. He doesn't want to be asked to run, and he isn't positioning himself. Check, check, check. We got that. Okay, so the question is, why hasn't the mayor of New York, a guy who also happens to have been Hillary Clinton's former Senate campaign manager, endorsed her yet? Mark, what on earth is Bill de Blasio waiting for?
Well, he's going to put out kind of a liberal version of the contract with America, and he wants her to endorse it. But there was a hilarious and interesting story in the Wall Street Journal today that laid out all the things that the de Blasio agenda includes, and Hillary Clinton's for all of them. She's giving him as much as she wants. There is furor in Hillary Clinton's camp about the fact that one of the most prominent people in America who hasn't endorsed her yet is the mayor of her own of New York City and her own former campaign manager. And it seems to me that he may be playing a more dangerous game than he realizes.
I think, the only thing that's going to get him to endorse her is the passage of time. He is a guy who, every mayor of a big city, especially one like him who thought that he was the sharp end of a spear of some big progressive revival across the country, he wants his time in the sun. This is a moment for him to get it. I think it's kind of amazing that he's doing this to his old friends, the Clintons. But I think, there's no thing she can say that will satisfy him. The only thing that will make him stop this, I think, is when enough pressure comes on him from others in the Democratic Party who tell him, look, it's time for you to shut up and get on board.
As she largely dances to the tune of the most liberal people in the party, an interesting question arises that we ask about Republican presidential candidates all the time. Okay. Will she do a Sister Souljah in the context of the Democratic nomination fight? This might be an opportunity for one, but I don't get the sense she's going to take it.
No, I think it goes against their theory of the case. Their theory of the case is it's not. The Sister Souljah moment was a moment when Bill Clinton was winning by triangulating and playing to the middle. She doesn't think that's how to win in 2016. She thinks the way to win is to mobilize and drive the Obama coalition out to vote, and especially to get young voters. I think that's as much as anything what's driving a lot of her calculations about why she can't afford to offend the left on a lot of these issues.
When the history of this campaign is written, I don't know who will write it, but when it's written, this de Blasio thing is going to be a not insignificant moment. All right, now let us read from the classic fairy tale of the brothers Koch. Chapter 1, the New York Times suggests David Koch is looking favorably at Scott Walker and told a private meeting in New York City that Walker would win the nomination. Then in Chapter 2, in USA Today, Charles Koch says that the bros might try to influence the Republican nomination outcome and are keen on a quintet of Republican wannabes, namely Bush, Walker, Cruz, Paul, and Rubio. Then in Chapter 3, in the Politico, Ken Vogel unearthed a Koch memo that outlines a $125 million campaign plan that also includes branching out with new chapters in some deep red states. Sounds very, very, very big. But, John, I ask you, is too much being made of the Koch's candidate proclivities, alleged, possible, and potential?
No. And I'll say why. Two numbers, $50 billion and $50 billion. $50 billion is the net worth of Charles Koch, and the $50 billion is the net worth of David Koch. These are not just billionaires. These are uber, mega, super billionaires who have also played the political game really, really smartly with a very sophisticated political operation that played a very strong hand in the midterm elections. These guys are not just angels. They can really move the needle, and I think it's perfectly appropriate that people are focused on it because they are really, really important.
In the immortal words of John McLaughlin, wrong! These guys are important, and the organizations they're building are testing out whether these kind of outside groups can build things like turnout operations and data. But the Kochs, as rich and important as they are, their network is divided. I don't think they're ever going to get behind a candidate before the nomination fight is pretty clear. Those five who they're thinking of supporting and they look favorably on, I think are going to get a ton of support from the Koch network. While they are huge players, there are a lot of huge players in this process, and others who I think will be significantly more decisive in the short term in determining the Republican nominee.
Wow. Well, it's certainly true if they don't end up backing a candidate, that will dilute their influence. I have no doubt about that.
I'd be stunned if they back a candidate.
The level of sophistication and the amount of I agree with that, but look, the level of sophistication and the amount of money, I just think you'd be crazy not to at least pay a little attention to those guys, right?
You know what I say?
They're kind of big
Have
players.
a Coke and a smile.
All right, I'll do that. Hillary Clinton had a brief public event on her schedule today, and thanks to a Facebook post from an attendee, we know that her top aides had a private fundraising session at someone's home yesterday. But what else are these folks up to when they are not in public? Hillary, Jeb, and their staff, as Chaz and Wedding Crashers would say, we never know what they're doing. Mark, what exactly do the presidential prospects and their advisors do when they're not living out their public schedules?
I mean, we barely know. Like Mike Murphy, one of the most important players in this process, who's not a candidate, who's working with Jeb Bush, used to be a pretty visible guy. I haven't seen him out in public much. He's doing a lot of retweeting lately. Sally Bradshaw, who's likely to be Jeb's campaign manager, did a conference call with major donors the other day on which she announced that the major news she'd be announcing on the call was that a few days earlier Jeb Bush had eaten pie. They're keeping a low profile. There's a lot of fundraising. There's a lot of strategizing. But frankly, I rarely say this on the show, I got no idea. When these candidates aren't in public and when the senior staff isn't in public, I can't quite figure out what they're doing because they are low profile compared to cycles past.
Mark, I know you're not underestimating the importance of pie, right? You're not doing that.
It was big news, but some of the donors on that call were a little disappointed. They were expecting to hear maybe how much Jeb had raised or something actually newsy.
Look, you know the following things are true. That among senior staff, junior staff, and candidates, a lot of it is just boring drudge work. That's what they're doing. They're out there hacking away, trying to raise money, writing memos to each other, getting all spun up on about various things. There obviously are other moments that are really important and decisive and crucial, but a lot of it really is just the spade work of politics. And I think what's interesting now is with the rise of social media on one hand, and the fact that so many reporters now, and there are so many donors and so many reporters have access to these calls, they actually now, as mundane as a lot of these things would normally be, they make them even more mundane because they're so afraid that what will happen to them is what happened to Mitt Romney when he made his comment about gifts on that donor call after the 2012 election. So everyone's just being as anodyne as possible in any situation that might become public.
On a future episode of With All Due Respect, we'll have more on this because when I last saw Mike Huckabee, I dropped a LoJack in his back pocket. And so I'm going to have a fair amount of data coming up on where he's been.
Fantastic.
All right, coming up, a showdown that's better than Romney-Holyfield. It's Obama-Warren. And then, can you believe that Hillary Clinton used to sound like this?
Lifting up our children with better education.
Education. You know, I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette.
The many voices of Hillary Clinton and a whole lot more coming up after this. Ding, 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 ding. In the blue corner, it's Barack Obama. And in the bluer corner, it's Elizabeth Warren. He says she's wrong on trade. She questions why the public can't see the details of an emerging deal. All right, so now let's be joined by our guest, another Senate Democrat who is pretty full-throated in his opposition to expanding trade authority for this president, whom he helped elect, Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. And John, good to be with you.
So first, let's talk about this deal. Obviously, it hasn't moved onto the Senate floor, hasn't been voted on in the House. What are your chances of stopping this from getting to the president's desk and becoming the law of the land? How will you do it, and what are your chances?
Well, Mark, it's a difficult assignment to stop it because I think there's a lot of support on the Republican side and some Democrats. But so I don't know the vote count yet, but I will say this. I think it's a very, very important debate to have. Frankly, I wish we were given more time to be able to examine the Trade Promotion Authority as well as the deal itself. But the first thing we have to confront is the Trade Promotion Authority, which I think I'm going to vote against it. I think it's a mistake for a variety of reasons. When I look at this Promotion Authority as well as the trade agreement itself through the lens of Pennsylvania, and I see what's happened over the last 25 years, it seems that every time we have a deal like this that presidents of both parties support, Pennsylvania gets the short end of the stick. There's not the kind of job growth and the kind of expansion or advancement of the middle class that I would hope we could get from a trade agreement. So this is a difficult subject between and among Democrats, but also I think for people in both parties.
Senator, you've pretty much been against a lot of trade deals since you've been in Congress. And obviously, as you said, your state certainly has a lot of voters who support that view. If you were a senator from Washington State or Oregon or California, would you have the exact position you have intellectually and vote differently? Or are you just representing your constituents in your state and that forms your view?
Well, I think it's a combination, Mark. There's no question that I represent Pennsylvania first, and I've got to fight for our jobs and make sure that we have strategies in place that leads to the kind of wage growth, which is, I think, the biggest economic challenge we face. You look at all the data shows that wages haven't grown barely at all over the last 40 years. So, and I think I also look at it just from the data, setting aside the concerns of Pennsylvanians and jobs. The data indicates over time that we haven't benefited certainly in the ways that were promised from NAFTA going forward. But there are a lot of people that disagree with me. But we have a good debate today. We're going through a process in the Finance Committee on the Promotion Authority, and that's the first part of the debate.
Senator, one of the people who disagrees with you is President Barack Obama, who you helped elect, who won Pennsylvania twice, who cares a lot about wage growth and cares a lot about the same economic issues that you care about. He disagrees with you pretty strongly. What is it that the president is not seeing that you're seeing? Does he just not get it? Are you saying that he's just that somehow he's just out to lunch on this issue?
No, I think there's a basic difference about the strategy to move the middle class forward, at least when it comes to this issue. The president and I agree on increasing the minimum wage, and the president and I agreed that having the Recovery Act in place to kickstart the economy was good for the middle class. We agree on a lot of issues that advance the middle class. On this one, and I heard him interviewed yesterday, the point he made in the interview I saw was that he was rather critical of NAFTA, as I have been. He asserts, I'm not prepared to accept this point of view or this assessment. It's more of a better way of saying it. His point of view seems to be that this is not NAFTA, that the playing field leveling metrics, meaning better labor protection so our workers can compete on a level playing field and don't get undercut by low-wage countries that we have an agreement with, the environmental protections, intellectual property, whatever it is. He would assert that all of those are better in this agreement. They're part of the foundation or bedrock of the agreement. I just don't see it that way, and we have a basic difference of opinion.
Senator, let me
go ahead, John.
Let me just shift to politics. Senator, Hillary Clinton running for president. You have not yet endorsed her. Why not?
Well, it's early, and I think you'll be learning some things about that rather shortly. But it's early in the process. I think she's running a very good campaign on a number of fronts. Number one is I think the issues she's addressing, especially the wage issue, which I talked about before, she's been focused on that, whether it's wages or whether it's growing the middle class. And I also think her approach in the campaign, talking to people in smaller settings and actually doing something that some of us candidates don't do enough of, which is listen, is a very effective way to talk to people instead of just having kind of the usual campaign metrics or activities around you. So I think she's running a very strong campaign. I think she's going to be the nominee of our party, and I think she's going to be elected.
Senator, you said you will hear something about that soon. Soon is now. You're about to endorse Hillary Clinton, aren't you?
You know what, Mark? I think you and John have been so effective at getting information for a book that I think on this one we're just going to have to wait a little longer.
All right, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw out some names. You tell me if this person is qualified today to be Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States. Bernie Sanders, yes or no?
Sure.
Martin O'Malley?
Yes.
Jim Webb?
Yep.
Governor Chafee?
What's that?
Governor Chafee, former governor of Vermont, of Rhode Island.
Sure.
Sure, all four of them are qualified. How about your friend from Scranton, Joe Biden? How are you going to look him in the eye and say, Mr. Vice President, I'm endorsing somebody else, even though you've made it clear you might want to run for president?
Well, you know, Mark, we don't know who's going to be running. We know that there's one candidate running for sure, and that's Hillary Clinton. And that's the question before, not just before me, but I think before anyone who's making a determination about whom they'll support.
Should we have a president from Scranton?
I would love to have that. That would be wonderful.
All right, so you're basically for Biden, is what you're saying. No, just kidding. Senator, just tell us what you think will if you're able to stop this trade pact from going through, just tell us what it will take.
I didn't hear that.
What would it take? What would the circumstances have to be to stop it?
Well, we would have to marshal enough support and votes first in the Finance Committee to stop the Trade Promotion Authority. We're going to have amendments today, and we'll obviously have a vote at the end of that process. But this is an uphill fight, and anyone in my position who says otherwise, I think, is probably a little too optimistic. But it's important to have this debate, and it gives us a chance to talk about the middle class and wages. Yep.
Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. Senator, thanks for coming to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
When we come back, the old Hillary Clinton, the new Hillary Clinton, and the Southern Hillary Clinton all in one place after this.
It's easy sometimes to lose track of where Hillary Clinton is from. New York? Washington? Arkansas? Illinois? Her itinerant life has affected not just what she says, but how she says it. So our resident linguist, Ali Elkin, decided to explore the evolution of Hillary Clinton's accent.
We're talking about accents. Everyone has one, even if you don't think you do, and some of us have more than one, like Hillary Clinton.
It was really silly. I'm glad nobody was around. And
her accents have fluctuated a lot.
The road to being somebody in this society starts with education.
Yes, that's Hillary in 1983. It's hard to tell whether she's pandering to her audience or just mimicking the people around her. That's not unusual, and lots of other politicians have done the same thing. But with Hillary, we have 3 decades of multi-regional public life to sift through. Let's go back to that 1983 clip.
Starts with education. Education.
Even though she's from Illinois, she did marry a guy from Arkansas. So it's not unreasonable that that would affect her speech. That inland southern accent, though, it starts to fade just 4 years later.
It is difficult to draw the lines between personal privacy, family privacy. But I think as a society, we've had more than enough examples.
There's a twang, but it's on its way out. The weird thing is that accent returns in 1992 when Bill Clinton is running for president.
You know, they've just been minding their own business and they got hit by a meteor. You know, I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette. Every time she called distraught saying her life was going to be ruined.
But through the 90s, Hillary discards her drawl.
I think that is exactly where it goes. Think so? Right there in the middle on the top. Good. That's great, Martha.
Side note, there are several Martha Stewart White House specials from the 90s, and all of them are amazing. Anyway, by the middle of the decade, the Illinois native starts to sound a touch Midwestern.
Questions come up, and we'll just keep doing our best to answer them, and hopefully it'll end at some point. I think that's only natural.
By the time she ran for Senate in 2000, Hillary Clinton, the Chicagoan by way of Arkansas and Washington, D.C., had to appeal to New Yorkers.
When I started this campaign, I'm not sure I knew quite what to expect. Lifting up our children with better education.
Education.
Education. I hope you'll give me that chance.
Was that a hint of the Northeast?
Long-term care.
Do I detect a subtle long-term care? So there's no strong accent here. But maybe the absence of an accent is in itself an accent. Let's skip ahead to 2007.
You know, I happen to think that it is just totally off base. It's, you know, so far out, it's hard to even understand and take seriously. But what people are talking to me about is not that. I got to tell you.
The chop and the G's at the ends of the gerunds, we're almost past the heartland into Sarah Palin territory. Seriously, though, it does sound like Hillary Clinton gets ever so slightly folksier when she's running a presidential campaign.
That Charlotte had, whether they're living in rural Iowa or inner city New York or anywhere else.
Obviously, she isn't the first person to modify an accent for an audience.
Wagwan, Jamaica.
Anybody here from Guyana? Me and my mates took the tube home from the pub because we were bloody knackered.
So Hillary's in good company. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
We'll be right back. Tomorrow, John Boehner sits down with Mark on the show, and Saturday, Walt Clyde Frazier is our man at the White House Correspondents' dinner in Washington.
We will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. As we say here, sayonara.